Yes, sir. The recording is
Okay.
started.
Yes, yes. So, dear students, let me welcome you. A very good morning to you. As Dr. Kamalika Datta had mentioned, we are starting some kind of a special lecture series for the benefit of all of you, and we shall be organizing lectures on various topics. So, we are starting with some of the topics on data structure and programming, which are supposed to be very basic and which all of you are supposed to have a very good concept on. So I shall not go into the very technical detail or coding detail, but rather what I try to do, I try to give you the basic concept, whatever is there. Now in between, I can give a pause so that you can ask me questions. Okay. So like that we can proceed. So as I said that our topic of discussion in this first lecture series is linked lists. So linked list is something which you are supposed to have studied in your data structures course. And this is something which is very essential or very useful when you write more complex programs and applications. So let me start with the very basics. See, the name linked list itself contains the word list. Let us first try to understand what do we understand by this word list. List basically means any set of items which you can organize in some kind of a sequence. Like for example, in a class there are students, they have roll numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We say that is a list. Well, we go to the market, we have to buy a lot of items. We note down the list in a paper 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is a list. So any kind of this kind of a set of items where I can identify some kind of an ordering. What do we mean by ordering? I can say that this is my first item, this is my second item, this is my third item, like this. So if I can do this kind of an ordering, then I say that this is a list. Now in your programming course, also in your data structure, you must have studied the concept of an array. Well, I am talking about one-dimensional array for the time being. This is a classic example of a list. Let's say when you declare an array, you have a certain number of elements. Let's say in C, when you declare something like int a6, then what happens? Some kind of a memory space is allocated, which we refer to as an array. There are 6 elements which, well, according to C convention, the index starts with 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this int specifies that each of this space that you allocate in memory can hold one integer data item. Right? Now here there is an order because the 6 elements of the array I can access by referring to its index A0, A1, A2 and so on, like this. That is why this is a list. Now one problem that we have in an array is that the array size, the size of the array that we declare has to be specified in the beginning. Let us take an example. Suppose we are writing a program to sort a set of numbers. Let us say in the beginning, I declare an array int a100. Then after I declare this, I can read the elements into this array and then I can do the sorting. But the problem is that when I declare int a100, I have already fixed up a maximum limit. So I can have maximum 100 elements. Now, when I write a program for sorting, I do not know how many elements actually will be sorted in the future. It can be 10, it can be 1000, it can be 100, it can be million also. So you may argue that, well, why not define a very large size array so that it can fit all numbers? Well, yes, of course you can do. You can define an array of size 1 million. This you can of course do. But the problem is that when you declare this array, that much memory space you are reserving for the array. So even if you are using only 10 elements, but you are reserving 1 million elements in memory. So unnecessary, you are wasting memory space. Okay. This is the main problem that we have in a traditional array. The second thing is that insertion and deletion. Suppose I have an array. Let's take a simple example. Suppose I have an array. There are some elements already stored there. Say 20, 10, 50, 70, 30, 45, 11. Let's say we want to delete an element from the array. Suppose I want to delete the element 17. To delete the element from the array, what you have to do? Well, of course, we have to remove this element 17, but all the elements that are there on the right of 17, they have to be shifted left by one position. 30 will come here, 45 will come in place of 30, 11 will come in place of 45. So a lot of shifting of elements is required. Same is true when you want to insert an element in the array. Well, if you insert an element at the end, it's fine, no problem. You can add another element, let's say 36 here. But if you want to add an element, let's say between 30 and 45, I want to insert an element, let's say 14. So what do I have to do? So all the elements on the right, 45, 11, 36, I have to shift them on the right by one position, make a space, and then put 14 here. So you see, when you have an array, insertion and deletion require lot of shifting of the elements in the array. This is a rather inefficient way of handling it, right? So insertion and deletion of elements in an array is very inefficient. That is why we look at an alternate way of representing a list that we refer to as a linked list. So linked list you have already studied. I believe all of you have studied in your class, but still let me start my discussion from the very beginning. So the basic idea behind a linked list is, well, let me take an example. Suppose you think of a class. Let's say there is a small class. There are 5 students. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's say these are their roll numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are their roll numbers. Well, I do not remember the names. Let's say I have their names: Amit, Sumit, Raj, and so on. There are names which I do not remember. I only know the roll number. So if I want to refer to the students in order, well, I can refer to there by their roll number. Roll number 2, directly I can refer to Sumit. Roll number 3, directly it will be Raj, and so on. Let us think of an alternative where, well, I do not know that which roll number is which student. The only thing I know is that the first student in the class is Amit. And already Amit has been told that who is the next student. So Amit knows, no one else knows. Well, I do not know. But I only know that the first element in the class is Amit. So I have to start with Amit. So I ask, who is the first person in the class? I go to Amit. Amit will say, yes, I am Amit, sir. I am the first. Then I have to ask Amit, who is the second? So Amit will tell me that the second is Sumit, because only Amit knows, no one else knows. Well, I have to ask Amit, and Amit will tell me the second one is Sumit. Then I asked Sumit, who is the third one? Sumit will tell the third one is Raj because only Sumit knows who is next. So you see, in this way of storing the information, we are not storing everything in one place. Rather, we are providing some kind of a link or a pointer. See, Amit has a pointer to Sumit, Sumit has a pointer to Raj, Raj has a pointer to the fourth student, and so on. This is the basic concept behind a linked list. So let us say, so in a linked list, if you look at the diagram below, I am just generalizing it. So I am saying that for each such element, in that example, it was a student, we have two things. We have some item. In the example I cited, the item was the name of the student. And there is a pointer. You see, this is the notation of a pointer as I have studied, a short arrow. This pointer actually says, what does it say? That here we are storing some address of the next element. In the first element, I have the information about Amit. In the second element, I shall have the information about Sumit. But in this first structure, in the second part, I shall be storing the address where this second element is stored. So I can use that address to directly go to that memory location where the second element is stored. Similarly, I can look at the second part of the second structure. There I will again get an address. I can directly go to the third structure. Just please excuse me, I am taking a short break of a couple of minutes. I shall be coming back. Just excuse me. Sorry, very sorry for the break. I'm back. So what I was saying is that when we have this kind of a linked list, we have several such items or elements. And each element, there are two parts. It contains the actual value of the item. In the example, it was the name of the student, and it contains a pointer or a link to the next element. Now, you have already studied C programming. A pointer of a link is nothing but address of memory location. So I am storing the first element, then I have a pointer which contains the address where the second element is stored, second structure is stored. Then I can directly go there. Similarly, here the second part will contain the address of the third part and so on. So is this concept clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. So this is something which you have already studied earlier. So basically, in the example, so whatever we are calling as a structure consists of two parts logically, and this structure we refer to as a node. The first field is the actual data which you are storing. Well, this can be anything. This can be a single data. This can be multiple things. Like for the students, there you can actually store the roll number, the name, the address, the mobile number, and whatever detail you require for the students. So those will be stored in the first part. And in the second part, as I said, you will be storing the address of the next item, which we call a pointer. So here you will be storing a pointer. This is how every node in this list will be stored. Right? Now you understand one thing. Just try to understand one thing. Suppose I was using an array. So when I declare int a, let's say 100, so what actually happens is, suppose this is my memory. I'm showing memory schematically. This is memory. So the entire array, let's say integer, typically integer, how much space it takes? Every integer number typically takes 32 bits or 4 bytes. So to store 100 element array, you would be requiring 400 bytes. So when you are declaring an array, what happens is that in memory, the entire 400 bytes of this array are stored in consecutive memory locations. This is called contiguous allocation. So if in memory, that much space is not available in a single place, the array cannot be allocated and you will not be able to run your program. Okay? This is what happens in an array. But when you consider this linked list kind of a thing, there what may happen, to see, this is my memory again. My first element can be stored here. My first element, again I say there are two parts. One is the actual data item. The second part is the pointer. The first element can be stored here. The second element, say this is element number 1. The element number 2 can be stored anywhere else in memory, not necessarily right after this. Element number 2 can be stored here. The only thing is that in this pointer, you have to have the address of this second element stored. Similarly, third element can be anywhere else. Let's say third element is here. So the second element here, this will have a pointer pointing to this tree. Like this, in a linked list, because you are always using pointer to the next element, the different data items need not be contiguous in memory. This is the biggest advantage of linked list, that even if in memory, the whole space is not available in a single place, but small memory places available all throughout, you can use linked list very easily. Okay, this is the main advantage, you can say, of linked list over an array with respect to memory allocation, memory space allocation. So talking about C, because normally we have learned programming in C, I am giving my examples in the language C only. There are so many other languages, you know, C++, Python, something very similar is there everywhere. Now, if I consider a node like this, which I am showing here, where there is a node which consists of some item and a pointer which I am calling as next. In C, I can declare this as a structure. You must have studied structure in C. So a structure is basically several data items which can be grouped together and given a particular name. Like here, I have two items, two data items. One I'm calling as item, other I'm calling as next. So one is item, other is next. But both of them I am grouping together, and the whole thing I am calling as node. Right? This is what a structure is, if you recall. Now, in this example, what does this structure contain? If you see, the structure contains first member of the structure. It is an integer data whose name is item. This one. The second one, you see, you have studied, when you have studied pointer, that anything that starts with a star is a pointer. Like when you declare, let's say int star x, which means x is a pointer variable. Pointer variable means x can store the address of a memory location. Similarly, this next I am declaring with a star, which means next is a pointer. It is storing an address. And here, when I have said int, it means it is pointing to an integer type variable. But in this case, the data type is struct node. Struct node is this structure itself, which means this pointer will be pointing to a similar structure like this. This is also a structure of type node. That is why we have written struct node in the beginning. Okay. Now, in this linked list is an example. Later on, we'll see that when you talk about tree, binary tree, and so on, there also something similar will happen. That you have a structure definition where there is one element which is pointing to an element of the same structure type. This is referred to as self-referential structure. That a structure within which there is a member element which is pointing to another element or another structure which is of the same type. Okay? This is the basic idea. Okay. Now let us take a concrete example of that students. Let us take that same thing. But before that, in general, a structure can contain any number of elements. And when you are specifically talking about linked list, like using this pointer to connect several such elements, okay? So we can have any number of, like we can have roll number, name, age, mobile number, anything you want to store about the students. So here, wherever earlier we showed as item, we can have any number of data stored for that particular student. And of course, there will be the pointer field. This is mandatory. This is the last one. There is a pointer field. I am giving the name of the variable as next, and the struct node name I am mentioning like this. Because this is the structure itself, I have given the name as node underscore name. So it is a structure of the same type. Okay? This is a self-referential structure. Let us take a concrete example. Let's say here, this is a structure definition written in C, where you look here, you see that above the students we are storing three information: roll number, name and age. So here I am assuming roll number and age are integers and name is a character string, maximum 30. Right? Now you must have studied this in your programming class, but just I am mentioning this for the sake of recapitulation. You see, when you declare a structure like this, stud is the name of the structure. Then you can define structure type variables like this. Struct stud, just like you can mention int ABC are of type int integer. Same here, this n1, n2, n3, these are three different variables you are declaring. They are all of type struct stud, right? This is our declaration here. Now, when you declare three variable, let's say n1, n3 of type stud, struct stud, you see in this struct stud there are three fields: role, name and age. So how do you specify the individual member elements? The method is very simple. We use a dot. We can write n1 dot role, we can write n1 dot name, n1 dot age, or n2 dot role. So the name of the structure variable followed by a dot followed by the name of the structure member. This is how we can access the individual elements of an array. Like for example, if you want to change the roll number, I can write n1 dot roll equal to 105. I can write this. Now there is a second way of accessing. Let me also mention this, because I am not discussing this part of it. I am assuming that you already know, but I am very quickly recapitulating. Suppose I have declared three structures n1, n2, n3 like this. Also, I define something like this. Let's say struct student star p. Star p means, you see, I told you anything you declare a variable name preceding a star, it means it is a pointer type variable. So p is pointing to a variable of type struct stud. So in your program, you can write something like this: p equal to, let's say, ampersand n2. What is the meaning of this? n2 is the name of a structure type variable. What does ampersand means? Ampersand means address of. Ampersand n2 means address of n2. So the address of n2 you are storing in p. That is fine, because p was a pointer variable. P is supposed to store an address, and it is supposed to store an address of type struct stud. n2 is already of type struct stud, so no problem. So I define a pointer which is pointing to one of the structures n2. Now with this pointer, if I want to access the member elements again, role, name and age, I use a different notation. I use p dash greater than, that means like an arrow, role, p dash greater than name, or p dash greater than age. So you remember the difference. When you are directly declaring variables, then you use dot, n1 dot role. But when p is a pointer, then you use this arrow notation, dash greater than. Otherwise, meaning is the same. You are accessing a particular element of the structure, right? Now later on, when I shall be giving the examples with respect to the programs that we write in C, so we shall be following these notations. So I am just quickly recapitulating this for your convenience. Okay, now let's consider this example that I have declared a structure of type students and I have declared three variables n1, n2, n3. Now, one thing you tell me, when you declare three variables, or let's say like integer also, when you write int a, b, c, what happens? In memory, somewhere in memory, later on we'll see where, somewhere in memory, we allocate space for A, space for B, space for C. Similarly, for this example, in memory, somewhere we allocate space for N1, space for N2, space for N3. So these space are already allocated in memory when you declare variables like this. Okay. Now assume that this N1, N2, N3 has already been allocated space in memory. So there are already memory locations allocated to store role, name, age, and this pointer. Everything is sufficient space is reserved here in memory. Okay. Now suppose I write something like this. These three lines. But before explaining this, let me show down below that I have already said that N1, N2, N3 has been allocated some space in memory. But I am logically showing that memory space like this. This is my memory space. And this memory space contains four elements: role, name, age, and next. Similarly, memory space for N2. Similarly, memory space for N3. Now I have just allocated space for the element. I have not created the links to make it a linked list. Now these three lines is actually doing that link creation. You see the first line, n1 dot next equal to ampersand n2. What does that mean? Ampersand n2 means address of n2. I am storing address of n2 in n1 dot next. n1 dot next means this one. So here I am storing the address of n2, and this I am showing pictorially by this arrow. This arrow actually means the address of n2 is stored out here. Similarly, n2 dot next equal to address of n3. In the next part of n2, I am storing the address of n3. So this link is also created. And the last element, there is no next element. Okay, this is the last one. So for the last element, we have a special keyword called null. We store null here. Here we store null. Null means there is nothing else after this. And null actually has the value 0. So any value 0 you store in a pointer, it will mean a null pointer. Okay. So is this concept clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. So just I have declared these three variables n1, n2, n3, and by writing these three lines, I have created the link. So I have the linked list ready. A linked list with three elements. Okay. So what I have said is written here. The null pointer is used to indicate that there are no more nodes after this. This is the end of the list. But one thing you recall here, when you have something like this, suppose I have already created everything. After that, I want to use the linked list. How do I do? I have to start from the beginning. I have to start from the first element, and then I can follow these pointers or links to move to the successive elements. And the first element is typically called as the head of the list. Right? So whenever you define such a linked list, you have to have a pointer to the first element of the list. This is mandatory. And once you have the first element, you can traverse the list. Like you have those three elements I showed. You have the three elements n1, n2, n3, and the pointers were already created. And let's say this is your head. The head is a pointer which points to the first element. Traversing means you first go to this first element, then the next address you can get from here, then you can go to the next element, you can get the address from here, then you can go to the next element. So we shall see a simple example that how this traversing can be done. Let us see a complete C program now. This very small example I have taken, three elements n1, n2, n3. Let's see this. So I am showing the complete C program. This is over 2 pages, the first page. So I am declaring the structure as I have said, same structure, students containing role, name and age. First thing I am doing is that I am declaring three variables n1, n2, n3 of type struct stud. And also we are declaring a pointer variable. This we shall be requiring later. When we traverse the list, this pointer variable p will be required for traversal of the list. But what after this, what we are doing here? In this 3 scanf, we are reading the details about the three students. First, we are reading n1.role, n1.name, n1.age. Then n2.role, n2.name, n2.age, and n3, n3, n3. Remember, n1, this role and age, these are integer variables. So that's why we are using %d here. And to recall, for integer, float, character in scanf, you have to give an ampersand before the name of the variable. That's why we are using an ampersand here. We are using an ampersand here. Ampersand means address of that variable. But when you have an array, like name 30 is an array, so you simply write name, you do not give an ampersand, because name of the array by definition is a pointer, it represents an address. That is why here you see there is no ampersand. So here what we are doing basically is that we are reading the roll number, name and age of the three students, n1, n2 and n3, right? So next what we have to do, we have to create the pointers to make the linked list. That also we have seen how we can do just by these three statements, right? Now let us see. We have created these three, the linked list. Let us explain the traversal process now. We have this n1, we have n2, we have n3. In the data part, we have three things. We have roll number, name and age. I'm not showing that. I'm only showing the pointers. Okay. You see, now what we are trying to do, we are trying to write a program that will start from the beginning, will traverse the list elements one by one, n1, then n2, then n3, and print out all the elements. It print out the role, name and age. See how we have done it. We had already declared a pointer variable p, you recall, struct stud star p. We have already declared it here. First thing we are doing is that we are initializing with the address of n1. When we write p equal to ampersand of n1, what does it mean? That p is now pointing to n1. Pointing to n1 means p is a pointer variable, it contains an address, it is the address of n1. So using p, I can directly go to n1. Now, here there is a while loop. I am repeating. While p not equal to null, is p null? No, this is null. P is null only here. Only the last element pointer is null. right? This is a valid address. This is the address of N1. This is not null. So it is not null. It will go inside the while loop. It will print the three variables. Now see, because P is a pointer, that's why we are using the arrow notation. But you see, when you had used scanf, this N1, N2, N3 were variables which are declared. That's why we are using the dot notation. Okay? So the difference between dot and this arrow should be clear now. If it is a pointer pointing to a structure, then you use this arrow notation. You are printing this value, integer, character string. Now what to do? So you have already printed out the values of N1 because P was pointing to N1. Now you have to go to N2. For that, what you have to do? You have to somehow make P point to the next element. How do I do it? Look at this statement. P equal to P next. What does P next indicate? See, initially so far P was pointing to N1. P next means the next field of N1. What does the next field of N1 contain? Next field of N1 we have already initialized with the address of N2. So this means basically the address of N2. So address of N2 we are assigning to P. So now P is pointing to N2. So when you go back to while loop, again do a print, now it will print the values for N2. Then again P equal to P next. P next means now this N2's next field contains the address of N3. So now P will be pointing to N3. So next time you go back, N3 will get printed. But finally, after printing, P next, when you compare, you will see that P next is null. So you stop here. While P not equal to null, it will come out of the while. Tell me whether this is clear or not. This is how you traverse the linked list.
Yes, sir.
Sir, could you
Yes,
please
sir.
repeat the concept of P to next pointing, sir?
P2 to next pointer. Okay,
Yes,
let
sir.
me repeat this. Let me repeat this. So I am again drawing. This was the first element N1. This was the second element N2. I am showing 2. So initially P was pointing here, right? P was pointing to N1 because we have written P equal to address of N1. So in this while loop, P not equal to null, P is not null because P is containing the address of N1, a valid address. It is printing role, name and age of N1 because P is pointing to N1. Look at this now. What is P next? This part. What does this indicate? P next means in this P is pointing to the structure. It is the next field. Next field means this one. Right? So what you have stored here, if you look into the first line out here, for N1, in the next field, you have stored the address of N2. So the address of N2 will get stored in P. So initially P was storing the address of N1 initially, but now it will store the address of N2. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Now once it is address of N2, when you go back in the while loop and again do a print, now P role, P name, P age will print N2. Now this process will be repeated till we reach the last element for which the next element is null. So this while P not equal to null will become false, it will come out of the while loop and this program will stop. Okay, fine. On the same program, let us try to write as a function. This traversal part, these few lines, let us write it as a separate C function. Same program. Let's see. First part is the same. This is the structure definition. The function I'm coming a little later. Let us look at the main first. This is the function. Let us go to the next slide. Look at the main first. In the main, what we are doing, it is very simple. We are defining as usual the three variables n1, n2, n3 and a pointer variable p, all of type struct stud. Then you are reading the role, name and age of the three students. Then we are creating the linked list. We are initializing p so that p points to the first element. Now you see, when you say p equal to n1, there are three elements. n1, n2, n3. P is pointing to the first element and the other links are already created. Now then we are calling the function traverse. So when, suppose you are the function, I ask you to traverse the linked list. So what you will ask me? You will ask me that I need to know the address of the first element of the list. Without that I cannot start, right? I have to know where is the start. That is why I am passing as parameter this p. This p is the address of n1, right? So when we write the function traverse p, we have to remember this, that my parameter is actually a pointer. It represents address of a structure variable. Let us now look at the traverse function. Let's go back. Let us look at this traverse. So here, there when you had called from the main function, you recall we had said traverse p. But inside a function, you can give any other name. Let's say here, the formal parameter, I have given the name head. This is also a struct stud star. It's a pointer. So this p, whatever is the value of p when you call it, this p will get copied to head. So now head will point to the beginning of the list. That means n1. So now the rest of the program is the same as I showed in the previous program. While head not equal to null, you print the values head role, head name, head age, and change head next to point to n2, then point to n3, like that. Head equal to head next. So is this function clear?
Yes, sir.
So if you have studied function well and you know how to pass a value, how to pass an address to a function, this should be very clear. So you see, when you have passed this p as parameter, you must remember that p is a pointer. P is the address of a structure variable. So here also I am declaring the parameter in a matching way. This is also a pointer variable, so that the value of p can directly come here in head, and then this function can execute. Okay. Now here in this example, I have taken a very toy example where three variables n1, n2, n3 were there. But in general, when you create a linked list, the number of elements can be anything. Let's say in a class there can be 100 students, there can be 200 students. So the program has to be made more general, right? So I do not know how many students are there. So I cannot just declare variables like that, n1, n2, n3, n4 up to n100. I do not know. There can be a small class where there are only 20 students. So I must not waste memory space. There is something called dynamic memory allocation. What is the meaning of dynamic memory allocation? It means you allocate only that much memory as needed. What this means is that, suppose I want to generalize the previous example. Suppose I want to generalize it for 20 students. I have to declare something like n1, n2, similar to this, up to n20. Let's say there is a class with 200 students. So there has to be 200 such. Well, you cannot write program like that, right? You define 200 variables, you write such 200 scan statements, scanf statements. You should not do like that. And the second problem is that how much memory you will be allocating, because you do not know how many students are there in the class. So you have to go for something called dynamic memory allocation. Well, again, you must have studied in your C class functions like malloc or calloc. Remember these names. These functions are used to allocate memory as per your requirement. Let us see, we shall see later how this malloc can be used along with this dynamic memory allocation concept for creating general linked lists. So what I'm saying is that in the context of linked list, we have to dynamically allocate space. Because you see, I have already shown that picture earlier, that if you look into the picture of your memory, your N1 may be allocated space somewhere here, N2 may be allocated space somewhere here, N3 may be here, anywhere. Let's N3 is here, let's say N4 can be here. They can be in any order as long as you are properly putting the pointers. N1 is pointing to N2, N2 is pointing to N3, N3 is pointing to N4. So as long as you put the pointer correctly, the linked list will work fine. This is the basic idea behind linked list. You do dynamic memory allocation, and there are two functions which are available. This you must have studied. In here, I shall be discussing only malloc. If you're interested to know about calloc, you can always read from the book. It's very similar. So this individual N1, N2, N3, N4, instead of declaring them as variables, we shall be using malloc to declare them as and when needed. We shall see that. So we are not allocating unnecessarily extra space like we had to do in an array. Right? Now in this context, when you say you allocate space in memory, you need to understand a few things. That how memory gets allocated. Here what I am showing, this is the overall view of memory. Now memory, broadly speaking, can be divided into 4 different areas. This part is the lowest address, and this side is the highest memory address. So memory addresses are growing from this side to this. So it will start from 0, 1, 2, and it will grow in this direction. See, the first space is reserved to store your program, which means the instructions. So you already are familiar with assembly language programming. Any programming you write in C, C++, whatever, after compilation, they get translated into machine code, assembly code and then machine code. So the machine code of the program will get loaded in the lowest memory space. And in a C program, you know that you can also define global variables. So any variable you define before your function declarations, they can be used in all the functions. They are called global variables. So global variable also are allocated fixed space in memory. In C, instructions and global variables, only these are allocated permanent storage areas. During the execution of a program, the addresses of these do not change, they remain fixed. Now let us come to local variables. Now when you define a function, there are a number of local variables to declare. Inside a function you declare variables. They all get allocated space inside something thing called a stack. Well, you already have studied stack. It is a last in first out structure you have studied. Well, we shall be discussing this in one of the future classes, that how these local variables get stored in the stack, how recursive programs get executed. These we shall see later. But for the time being, remember, local variables get stored in the stack. And stack is not something fixed. Something gets pushed, something gets popped. You call a function, something gets pushed. You return from the function, something gets popped. So local variables are not stored permanently. They are stored only temporarily. And in between these two, there is an area which is called heap. And when you use this malloc or calloc for dynamic memory allocation, this memory gets allocated in this area, in the heap area. So when you talk about malloc, you are actually saying that memory is getting allocated in the heap space, in this part of memory. Okay. So whatever I have said is written here. The program instruction and global variables are stored in a permanent area. Local variables are stored in stack. Well, we'll see later that not only local variables, you store something called an activation record. See, this concept of this activation record is very important when you go for some next level courses like compiler design. In compiler, when the compiler is generating code, this activation record concept becomes very important. So we shall discuss this in one of the later lectures. And what I said, that the memory space between these areas is referred to as heap. Right? Regarding the functions that are available for memory allocation, I already told you that there are malloc and calloc, two functions are available using which you can dynamically allocate memory. And if you do not need that memory space anymore, you can call free. If you want to change the amount of memory you have allocated, you can call realloc. But I shall not be showing realloc. I shall be showing malloc. See, malloc and calloc, the concept is very similar. Only difference is that malloc simply allocates a block of memory of whatever size you are asking for. Suppose you ask for 100 bytes. So it will allocate memory block of 100 bytes. Calloc will do the same, but it will also initialize these bytes to all zeros. Malloc does not initialize, but calloc will also initialize them to zeros. Okay? That is the main difference. Let us see how malloc works. The function malloc is used to allocate a block of memory. And this is the function prototype. We shall take an example in the next slide. You call the function malloc. Within bracket, you specify how many bytes you want to allocate. How many bytes? You remember this. The size, whatever you mention, byte size, here you specify the number of bytes you need to allocate. And malloc will look into the available memory space. It will reserve a block of memory. And suppose in memory, it finds that there is a space available which is free of the size you have asked for. So it will allocate the space and it will return the pointer. Because you have to use this memory, no? To use this memory, you have to know the memory address. So it returns pointer representing the starting address of this memory block. Now, malloc does not know whether the memory block you are allocating you will be using to store integers, floating point numbers, characters, structures, whatever. That's why it, by default, it returns a pointer to data type void. So in your program, when you want to use a pointer of any particular data type, let's say you had declared this PTR as integer pointer. Let's take an example. This was an integer pointer, integer PTR. So in that case, instead of type, you will write here int. Within bracket, int star. Now you recall anything within brackets, if you write some data type, it means type recast. Malloc returns a value of type void, pointer of type void star, and you are recasting it to int star. Only after that you can assign that address to PTR, because PTR was also int star. So you need this kind of a typecasting before you can assign this address to a pointer variable. So let us take a concrete example in the next slide. Suppose here is an example where you want to allocate an integer array of size 100 elements. So I want to declare space, I want to allocate space for an integer array of size 100 elements. What do? I call malloc. I know 100 elements, but I may not be knowing that these elements I'm assuming of type integer. So I really do not remember that how many bytes each integer takes. Well, it may be 4, it may be 8. So to be on the safe side, I can call this function sizeof. Sizeof takes a data type as the parameter, int. If you write sizeof int, this will return for most of the computers a value 4, which means the size of an integer is 32 bytes or 4 bits. 4 bytes. 32 bits or 4 bytes, sorry. 32 bits, 4 bytes. So if you multiply it by 100, you get the total number of bytes you want to reserve. So it will allocate 400 bytes of space. It will be returning a void pointer. Suppose in your program, you have declared an integer pointer like this in star p. So now you can write p equal to, you recast this return value, which is an address, to int star, and then you assign it to p. Now once you have assigned it to p, just imagine what happens. This p is what? P will contain the address of the first element of the array. Now tell me, if I write a program like this, let's say int p100, what does this mean? This means that I am asking to reserve space for 100 integer elements in the array. And what does p indicate in an array? If you write only p, it means the address of the first element of the array. So conceptually, it is the same situation here. Here also, this p will indicate the address of the first element of the array. So you see, once you do this, you have already done of a one-dimensional array. So whatever you are doing, this int star p followed by this is exactly equivalent to writing int p100. Because from after this, you can access the individual elements as p0, p1, p2 like this, just like an array. Okay? But the beauty is that in the program, you can write whether you need 100 elements or 200 elements or 1 million elements. So this you can also read using scanf. You can write a variable n multiplied by this. So this can be truly variable. So you do not unnecessarily allocate memory space beyond what you will be actually requiring. Okay. Some more examples. Suppose you are declaring a pointer of type cat star. So when you are allocating some space using malloc, let's say 20 bytes, you will be recasting it at cat star before you can assign it to CPTR. Similarly, now come to that student example. So we have already declared a structure called struct student. Let us say I declare a structure pointer. I'm given a name SPTR. Suppose I have a class with 10 students. So I allocate only that much space. 10 multiplied by stud is a structure, right? I write struct stud. This will give me total number of bytes required for every structure. Size of that. Size of struct stud. 10 multiplied by that, that means I reserve space for 10 such elements. Right? And again, before I assign it to SPTR, I recast it as struct stud start, and then only I make the assignment. This is how we do it. Let's look at another thing, that when you do a malloc, a single malloc statement allocates a contiguous block of bytes. But if we use multiple mallocs, then each malloc can allocate space from different memory places. Let's say if you write a program like this, say here, malloc 100 into size of int, which means you are asking to reserve 400 bytes of memory. So in memory, this 400 bytes will be allocated in one consecutive chunk. But if you go back and call this statement again, then maybe the next 400 byte will be allocated somewhere else. Okay. Now here what I'm saying is that sometimes it may happen that you are asking to allocate some space, but that much contiguous space is not available in memory. Sufficient contiguous memory space is not available. In that case, this malloc will be returning the value null. So if you want to make that error checking in your program, so just immediately after this malloc, when you are assigning it to a pointer, you can check with the if statement. If this is equal to null, then you print the error message and you stop your program. Exit will stop your program. That memory space was not available. I cannot allocate space. Okay. And in a program, after you have finished using this memory, it is always good to free this space. Otherwise, other programs that are running, they will not get this space. So this free function that is available, this is used to create, let's say, in an earlier statement, you have written PTR equal to, let's say, int star malloc something, I'm not showing here. And at the end, you can write free PTR. So when you write this PTR equal to malloc, the memory space will be allocated in memory. And when you later on call this function free with this pointer variable as the parameter, because PTR is already pointing to the first element, right? So this space which is allocated will be released. Or some other program can be using this. Now today I am stopping here. In the next lecture that we shall be having, we shall be announcing the time later. There we shall be continuing from here, and we shall be seeing that how we can have a general linked list implementation of any arbitrary number of elements, and how we can do the common kind of operations like insertion, deletion, and traversal of the elements in the array. So
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for taking this class. Students, if you have any questions, please ask sir now.
So if you have any questions, you can ask me.
Okay, sir, if they do not have any questions.
Sir, for now, we don't have. We will study and let you know
Sure.
in the next class.
So it is
most
good
probably.
that you can do things. You can collect all the questions from the
Yes,
groups,
yes, sir,
and you can
yes.
mail them to me or whatever way.
So
I
from
can answer. I can
detail,
respond.
from year wise, I can do, but I don't know the other students.
Year-wise, I think it's fine. Year-wise, you can do it.
Okay,
Fine.
okay.
Sure.
Thank you, sir, for today's session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So I'm stopping the recording.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.